Hello everybody, how are you? So what we are going to learn from this video, the abolition of slavery, right? This is the fifth section from this chapter, the French Revolution. Before start the explanation of abolition of slavery, you must know the meaning of a slave. Slave, these are the people they pick up from their home places and sell them into the market, and where they made a hard work without any pay. So many countries of the world, they get their work done through these slaves, and Europe was one of them. Now our explanation will start here. Europe, when Europe when Europe was getting a powerful country, he started to conquer the places around the world. He started to occupy the places around the world. And one of the place Europe occupied in a Caribbean island. That and where and there in Caribbean island, Europe established his colonies. In the area of Caribbean island, there was a Martinique, Guadeloupe and Saint Domingos. These were the three places in Caribbean island where Europe established his colony. And in that colonies, they produced so many things like indigo, tobacco, sugar, tea and coffee. And after producing these things, they send it back to their own country and sold it to some other part of the country. Now question is raised, after establishing their plantation over here, who will work? Plantation owner. They themselves will not go to do work here. And Europeans, already they were reluctant. Reluctant in the sense they were not willing to do work. They were not willing to do work in a far land, in an unfamiliar land. So who arranged them a worker? Worker arranged them through the slave trader. Where slave trader? See, there is a two cities, Bordeaux and Nantes. That was the two port cities of Europe. That was the flourishing slave. This was in that city, in that port cities, economic prosperity to the flourishing of slave trade. From here, slave trader, they sailed from here and they come here in Africa, right? Here they come in Africa. They went to Africa and here they bought a slave with the local sufficient. And after bought the slave, they branded and shackled them and tightly pushed them into the ship. And after the 3 months of long voyage, from here to here, after the 3 months of long voyage, they cross Atlantic Ocean. 3 months of long voyage, they cross Atlantic Ocean and reach into the Caribbean island. And in Caribbean island, where Europeans established their colonies in these three areas, that slave sold them. That slave sold to the plantation owner. And that slave, here they did the work to meet the growing demand of European. What demand? As I told you, sugar, tea, tobacco, indigo. These all the things they cultivated and production over here. And was a thing cultivate that send it back to the Europe. So this thing was called a triangular slave trade. And one thing, when slavery was started, slavery had begun on a 17th century. Now question is raised, why nobody has worked on to abolish slavery? Actually, slavery, if we talk about Louis XVI, in an old regime of France, when there was a Louis XVI, he was ruling. He nothing to do with these slaves. because he just need a tax. At anyhow, anyway, text would reach to the Louis XVI. So it nothing to do with the slavery. Now, when National Assembly came in a power in 1791, National Assembly, while they were drafting the Constitution, they did a long debate and discussing about the right to man and citizen, but they did not pass the law, but they did not pass any law regarding to abolish the slavery. Why? Because the member of a National Assembly, they were the prosperous section of the society from the third estate. As I told you, third estate was divided into three sections of the society: upper middle, middle and lower middle. So the National Assembly member belonged to upper middle section, and some of them engaged with the slave trade business, slave trade. Some of them they have their own plantation in the colonies. To get their work done, they need a slave. So that's why they did not abolish slavery, because if they abolish the slavery, their work, their trade would affect it. Now, after the National Assembly, who came in a power? Convention. When convention came in a power, in the regime of Jacobin, the group of the member of a Jacobin, they belongs to a less prosperous section of the society. In the third estate, they belong to a middle and lower middle class. So, the member of a Jacobin group, they belongs to less prosperous section of a society, as they did not have their slave trade, as they none of them had engaged, none of them had connected with the slave trade, nor they have their own plantation in that colonies. So that's why they said, we don't need slavery. So they abolished the slavery. Slow slavery was abolished in 1794 during the Jacobin reign. After Jacobin reign, when directory rule came, they also nothing to do with it. But after the directory rule, in 1804, when Napoleon came in power, he crowned himself as an emperor of France, and he reintroduced slavery. Why? Because Napoleon said he supported to the richest person of the society. He wanted a money to our country. He wanted a money to our nation, to their nation. That's why he supported to slavery. He said if we stop slavery, then the trade of the richest person of the member, their trade will get affected, and if their business will get affected, then money stop come. So that's why Napoleon restarted slavery. But finally, when slavery was abolished, in 1848. 1848 from the whole colonies of the European. Wherever the European has established their colonies and they kept a slave to get their work done, finally slavery was abolished in 1848. Slavery was abolished. Right? Now, the sixth section from this chapter, the revolution of everyday life. Can politics change? The people, the language there, can politics change? The clothes people wear, the language they spoke, the book they read. The year following 1789 in France saw so many changes in the life of men, women and children. The following year 1789, it has after storming the Bastille Fort in summer 1789, it has passed a law that the one most thing get to see, like abolition of a censorship. See, abolition of a censorship. See, in an old regime of France, any written material and cultural activity like book, newspaper, plays could publish or perform only after they had been approved by the censor of the king. If king will approve them, only then they can publish or perform these all the things. Now the declaration of the right, to man and citizen. What declaration of the right to man and citizen? Now they have the freedom of a speech and expression to be, it's a natural right. They said it is a natural right that everybody has a right to spend their life to their own way. And newspaper, pamphlet, printed picture, books and so on, they flooded into the town of France, into the city of the France, and from where they traveled rapidly to the countryside. Countryside means villages. In a small town, in a small places, these all the things rapidly traveled. And the one most biggest thing, the one most biggest changes in the everyday life during the revolution, that was a freedom of a press. Means freedom of a press also means that opposing views of an event and could be expressed. And now each side sought to convince the other of its positions through the medium of a print. People can play songs and the fasting procession that affect the large number of people. So this was the sixth section of a chapter, the revolution of everyday life. Now the chapter is the conclusion of this chapter. So now we come last section from this chapter, conclusion. What is the conclusion of this chapter? The conclusion of this chapter now entered a Napoleon Bonaparte. In 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte, he crowned himself as an emperor of Napoleon Bonaparte crowned himself emperor of France, and he set out to conquer the neighboring European countries, disposing the dynasties, and placed one of his family member in that dynasty, which was disposed through the Napoleon. Why he placed one of his family member in that kingdom, in that dynasty which he conquered? Because he wanted to expand his kingdom. Napoleon saw his role as a modernizer of Europe. He saw his role as a modernizer of Europe, and he introduced many laws. What kind of laws he introduced? Such as a protect to private property. He introduced a law to protect a private property, like the person, those who were a big businessman, those who were a trader. As I told you, in a slavery time, he introduced the slavery. So that's why he introduced the slavery, because he wanted to protect them. So he protect to private property. Second, he brought a uniform system of a weight and measure. What is the uniform system of a weight and measure? Like, as you read in your math section, 1000 gram is equal to 1 kg, 1000 milliliter is equal to liter. So that is called uniform system of weight and measure. And decimal system, he introduced a decimal system. What is a decimal system? Like, if you go to market and buy anything and the price of that thing is 10 rupees 50 paisa, you don't have 50 paisa, you have only 10 rupees. What you will do? Either you pay 10 rupees or you pay 11 rupees. If you are paying 10 rupees, then whose loss in it? Of course, that shopkeeper who is selling the things and good. So that is called decimal system. Napoleon Bonaparte, he introduced a decimal system also. And the next thing, initially when Napoleon doing such a so many things for the France and his conquered kingdom, his conquering kingdom which he conquered. Initially level, from very starting level, initially many people saw Napoleon as a liberator. They said, no, yeah, of course, this is the person who will bring a freedom for us, who give us our life according to us, according to our way. But it did not happen as people were thinking to, as people were considering to Napoleon. What had happened? Soon after that the Napoleonic army, they came to be viewed everywhere as an invasion, invading everywhere, as an invader everywhere. Why? Because they said, now people think, why are you behaving us like this? So that army said to them, you are the conquered country and we will rule on you. It means in the other hand, if we say that you are our slave, so that's why later people start to hate with the Napoleon. But what had happened? Napoleon came in France in 1804 and in 1815 he defeated in a war of Waterloo. He defeated, and once he defeated, so he left out. So Napoleon left the France in 1815 when he lost the war of when he was defeated in a Waterloo. And many of his measures that carried his revolutionary ideas, actually his as he saw himself as a modernizer, and people from very starting people start to like him. His some idea people carried, his some idea people like to follow. What kind of ideas? Like his revolutionary ideas carried. What was his revolutionary ideas? His revolutionary ideas was liberty and modern law. These were his revolutionary idea. With them, other part of Europe, the people, it was carried, his revolutionary ideas carried to the other part of the Europe except the France. Impacted because that ideas, which idea? That these two ideas, liberty and modern law, impacted people long after Napoleon had left. Now, the idea of a liberty, democratic right, fraternity, equality, modernizer, etc. These were the important legacy of the French Revolution. What were the legacy of the French Revolution? These were the some point which were the legacy of the French Revolution. And during 19th century, these ideas start to spread from France to rest of the Europe, where feudal system was abolished. Colonial people, they revoked the idea of freedom. And in India, the Tipu Sultan and Raja Ram Mohan Roy, they were the two examples of an individual who responded to the idea coming from revolutionary France. So the chapter is completed over here. Today in this video I have completed the last three section of this chapter, section 5, section 6 and then the 7 is the conclusion. Hope you understand what I had explained you till now. So have a nice day. Bye bye and take care.